Good morning,
there's no coming around that. That's pretty well ingrained. Hey, Nupur. Good morning. Hi, Dina.
Hey.
Hi. Morning. And hey, VJ. VJ's with us. Meeting minutes. Meeting minutes for today. Oh, look at that. Is this a new Google Meet feature? Let me share with you what I mean. I guess in Google Meet now in Chrome, you can share not only your entire screen, not only just a window, just an application, but you can also share just a Chrome tab. Interesting. Let's try it, see how it goes. Huh. Okay. Yeah, here's, just as we're waiting for people to join, out of curiosity, here's a new Google Meet feature. Interesting. All right, seems to be working well. I'm curious, can you see that I have other tabs open, or are you just able to see the contents of the browser tab? I guess another way of asking that is, can you see my bookmarks or my other browser tabs? VJ. All right. Well, I guess enough of playing around. It's Monday the 4th. May the 4th be with you. The Meshery CI working group meeting, our second one. We had quite the turnout for the first one. That was great. And now we're going to get into the meat of the work, I suspect. So only the bravest of hearts are here today. Speaking of, who are we missing on the attendees list? Do we have everybody? Now that I'm using the browser tab sharing feature, I think I'm getting confused on navigation. Kush, Naveen, Nupur, Simon, Medina. Okay, very good. I think we got everyone. All right. A couple of topics up for today. Actually, again, mostly like as we go forward, I expect I'll probably end up driving this conversation in this meeting a little bit less and less. But I put up a couple of topics that we could chew through. These are things that are mostly topics from below. In either they were current last week and still outstanding, or they're backlog items that I think we might have time for. So this week, one of the items from last week is to do a demo of ReleaseDrafter. is to maybe talk more about the sort of a first step here to versioning Meshery server. We kind of talked about how we think, why that needs to be done and how we think that that might be done. And I guess I didn't put that one here. By the way, just quick housekeeping. Everyone on the call is aware that we record the calls and put them up on YouTube. I'll try to only call out those housekeeping items when newcomers are on, because it gets kind of old, I think. But I had a newcomer last week that was surprised, I guess pleasantly surprised, that their smiling face was on YouTube. And so, all right, first item up, is Shavai with us? He's not, correct? He is not. So we will skip over that. Has anyone spoken with Shavai recently? He has messaged a couple of times to me after some of our calls. I think just trying to catch up on the calls and spend what time he can. I'm asking because he's been trying to chase down this 0.4 release for a little while. We originally had asked for a release lead because I was the bottleneck to getting the release out. And it's been about 4 weeks now. And so I'm hoping we can get the release out, but I'm not, Shavai has school to get done and a couple of other things. And so I'm hoping we can get this over the line, but I wanted to ask if anyone's spoken with him recently, if you guys know where he's at. Okay, sounds like nobody has, so. Next topic is the triggering of specific CI actions. Okay, for specific pull requests. This is a hot topic. Kush, take it away.
I think we can discuss it after ReleaseDrafter, because if ReleaseDrafter is implemented, some of the tasks of the above mentioned proposal will be done automatically.
Got it. Okay. Next topic then is, I guess, is the ReleaseDrafter kind of review.
So, I think I will have to present my screen. So to demo the ReleaseDrafter, I messed up with the Meshery temp repo. So as I told you, ReleaseDrafter provides us with two configurations. We can either use GitHub Actions, or we can give ReleaseDrafter bot permissions to a repository. So in the Meshery temp repo, I have used the ReleaseDrafter action. The action uses a configuration file which I have provided as releasedrafter.yml. The configuration file is put in the .github folder. Yes, it's over here. So the name template and the take template are following the semantic versioning, which we already follow in Meshery. And coming to the categories, there we can do the thing like if we have a PR which is related to some new feature or some new enhancement, it will be titled under the title features. If we have a PR which fixes a bug or it will title in the bug fixes. And if we have any maintenance PR like dependency upgradation or moving of packages, and it can be titled in the maintenance. And another thing, there is this template where we can thank contributors. So I just labeled some 3 to 4 PRs of DependerBot according to the area they were concerned. So I just made a release. So this number 54 PR I had labeled the PR as enhancement, as you can see over here, and it was automatically categorized into the title features. I labeled the number 46 PR as fix, I think. Yes, I labeled it as fix. It was categorized in the bug fixes. And I labeled the number 63 PR as core. It should be core, I think, yes. I labeled the PR as core and it was categorized under maintenance. And then we have a section where we can mention thanks a lot to our contributors for making the release possible. And the GitHub action will automatically draft the release as soon as there is any commit to the master. And if we don't want any categorization into some titles, then we can just use the release drafter action, which I had used earlier. So it will be like this. All the PRs which have been merged into master will be mentioned, and there will be title under the changes. So I think this is the only thing which we need in the release drafter. One of the major concern is about the labeling of PRs. So we can either decide to label PRs on our own, or we can write some custom bot which can label according to the commit name or else the title of the PR. So that is the point where we would need the discussion.
Thank you, Kush. Who has feedback, comments, concerns on that behavior? I have a couple, but I don't need to go first. Maybe so. A couple. So first is just a question. Kush, do you recollect the conversations that we were having with Shivai about the new release page? And was he, if I recall, he was that system was well with ReleaseDrafter. Is that right?
Shiva was saying that we should have a changelog file where we can mention each and every pull request with the link to the pull request. So I just gave him a suggestion that rather than having contributing dot changelog.md file, we can use release drafter, which will do the thing which you are telling us to do automatically.
Okay. Which seems to fall right in line with what he was trying to accomplish.
Also, coming to the number of commits, like if we have a PR which consists of 11 commits and there is one PR, so the release drafter will automatically squash all the commits and it will title all of the commits of the PR as single PR.
Oh, okay. That was okay. Does it retroactively? So do you mean that? Sorry, Kush, do you mean that it retroactively goes back and squashes commits? Or does it do it right at the point in time that a PR is merged?
If any PR is merged or the PR is concerning with around 11 to 12 commits with it. So rather than taking each and every commit, the release drafter will just take the PR title, whatever the PR title was, and it will put it under as a change, or it will be consisted of single PR.
Okay. So let me try to clarify about, like, when ReleaseDrafter updates its log of changes and it's categorizing those changes, under maintenance and bug fixes and features, it's categorizing those by label. Is it doing any manipulation of the commits in GitHub, or of what you're talking about squashing? Is that
No, it does not actually squashes the commits. Just to add a changelog line, it just take the PR title. Else the number of commits will be the same as the number of commits you have merged. So it does not actually squashes the commits on the GitHub UI. It just
okay?
takes the PR title for its reference.
Very good. That makes sense to me. you had said a couple of keywords there that I thought like, oh, oh no, you had spoken a bit in the past about potentially squashing commits, and the primary concern around that as a separate topic being, ensuring that people were getting their due credit and etc. Great. Okay, so that makes sense, and that kind of conforms a bit to what I think Shavai was headed. Two other comments then. The labels that we're using, the ones that you demonstrated just now, those make sense. I think will work in terms of how we're administering our repositories today. A couple of the labels that are in there, I don't think that we're using, but it doesn't hurt to have them in ReleaseDrafter anyway, which is to say that the inverse is true. There are a couple of labels that as we look to use ReleaseDrafter, we could probably add in. So some of those labels are like Meshery CTL. If we were to categorize bug fixes and enhancements for Meshery CTL as its own component, that might be interesting to do. But now that I say it, I think the way that we're organizing ReleaseDrafter currently is just irrespective of whether the enhancement went into the adapter or to Meshery server, Meshery CTL, or to the docs. Doesn't matter. All of those.
I was thinking about following semantic PR labeling for a repo. Like currently what we do is Meshery CTL, Meshery UI, and what semantic PR naming is like, there are around 5 to 6 keywords like feat, fix, core, docs, and test. And there are 1 or 2 more which I'm missing. So like we can write a bot which can detect the semantic name of the PR, and it can label the PR accordingly. But then again, there will be missing the label, like if you want to categorize a PR into Meshery CTL, or if you want to categorize the PR into Meshery adapter. So that's why I needed some discussion over here.
Yeah, I guess part of whether there's a semantic bot that does labeling based on semantics or not, maybe in advance of that is us to ask ourselves. Actually, Kush, can you share that example PR one more time?
Just a minute. I will show the example of semantic naming.
The question here that I was going to ask: do we want to group all feature requests under the category called features, or would we rather break out, categorize based on component?
So like here are the semantic PR labeling which we can follow. If we start a PR with feat, the PR will be categorized into the feature column. If we start with fix, it will go into bug fix. There are docs, style, refactor, perf, test, build, CI. So it depends upon us, like, do we need to follow semantic naming or do we need to go with some other style?
If it's a custom bot, it seems like we could use
if we go with semantic naming, there are already few bots written, so there won't be any big issue. But if we go with custom naming, then also it won't be a big issue because we will just need to observe the PR title.
Got it. Okay. Is everyone hearing the feedback? I think, Kush, whenever I speak, feedback happens. And I don't know if that's messing up anyone from. So I think we got a couple of questions on the table. The first one, let me try to articulate. Let me maybe bring up the PR that Kush, you were sharing, to try to get a vote or get some opinions on what I'm asking, what I'm talking about. If I could figure out how to share my screen again. Okay. So Kush, you were just sharing an example, I think, of, was it under release? So here's an example of how, based on certain labels today, that ReleaseDrafter will produce the release notes. So good. And the way that the release notes are categorized in this is that all things that are enhancements go under features. All things that, they're categorized like this. An alternative way of categorizing is, and it's how we've been doing it within Meshery right now. Not that it needs to stay that way. I'm going to switch to the Meshery repository. And the way that we've been doing it kind of to date has been, well, it's been done by hand, which is maybe kind of an issue. We're trying to get away from part of this. But it's been done by component. And it's really just been focused on features. And so by component, it's like, hey, here's the things that are coming forth new in Meshery server, new in these adapters, new in this component. Seems like there's two ways maybe of organizing those. Does anyone, assuming we just went with the default sort of release bot categorization, in which we would group all components and the changes to those components into the same area?
No, actually, we can follow the other, like which we are following in the Meshery repo. The only thing there will come is the labeling of the PRs, which we can write a bot for it. So, like titles which are mentioned here, these are not some standard titles. Like we can edit it from the configuration file. So we can edit the title and we can also edit the label which ReleaseDrafter should observe under a specific heading. So we can have heading like Meshery CTL and Raptors, and we will observe label like if any PR is having label Meshery CTL, it will go into the heading Meshery CTL. Any PR with label Meshery, it can go under the Meshery, and any PR with label Raptor can go under Raptor. So for this, we would need a bot which can detect the PR title. Like for now, as we are doing, if a PR is concerned with Meshery CTL, we write Meshery CTL in the prefix. The only issue will be with Meshery, because if a PR is concerned with Meshery, we are using multiple labels like Mesh Sync, Mesh Performance, and even UI.
Right.
So here we can observe multiple labels, or we can combine all these labels into a single label Meshery.
Right. Yeah. So it's only on occasion that we will label a PR. Like in this case, this is manually done. That when someone opens up an enhancement or a PR, if it's appropriate, we'll do that labeling. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else have opinions on kind of the discussion? Is it too hard to try to categorize things based on component? I assume that when you're reading release notes, that it's easier to digest what a release is when you break them out by component. So you can just kind of see the features for that component. I assume that's easier to read, but I think it's probably harder for us to accomplish.
Lee, I have one question that as we are doing it previously while maintaining the release draft, that we are categorizing the new changes we have made in the release or in the previous version. We are just mentioning the new things that we have provided, and based on three categories: adapters, Meshery CTL, and Meshery, we are writing the changes. But in the way Kush is currently doing, we have mentioned that what are the bugs fixed, what are the maintenance done, and what are the new things that have come up. So I think whenever we release a version, we should also mention that the previous bugs have been fixed with this. So are we like trying to focus it somewhere in the previous version, or should we do it? So that is one question I have.
My opinion is that we should include the bug fixes as well. That I guess my overall opinion is that a couple of things. One is that no one looks at these release notes today, and hopefully that will change over time. That the first people that the first few that start to look at them and want to keep pace with the project will mostly be interested in new features, kind of what those are. And that over time, more and more will also be very interested in like specific bugs that they've found getting fixed. So hopefully we'll have people who are very much so into the nitty gritty. I consider that the bug fixes are kind of nitty gritty, but that they should be included, that using automation here like ReleaseDrafter is very helpful and will just make the project consistent and a bit more smooth. And that the release notes, like this change log or these release notes, that it's okay that they are generally fairly specific and somewhat technically written. That the thing that when you want to kind of market a release and tell people about all the good things that are inside there, generally that would be like a blog post or some other vehicle for telling people about, because this provider is introduced as a new concept. Yeah, it's written, it's not the title of a whole, like this was delivered as a set of many different PRs. And so the argument for writing it in a human readable format is a good argument, but this doesn't really explain what those are. Like that would take pointing people to the docs, or that would take a blog post. And so anyway, long-winded answer to Nupur, yes, that having the bug fixes in there is a good thing. It would be nice if they were broken out by component type, but I kind of think that might be more work than it's worth. Part of that work is, in part, what Kush was saying, which is today, in order for that to work very well, we've got to make sure that either A, we have a practice of manually assigning labels to pull requests so that they get categorized correctly, or B, having a triage bot a semantic a bot that looks at the semantics of the PR and tries to do its best guess. It will get those wrong occasionally. Yeah, in most respects for me, the thing that ReleaseDrafter is doing right now is probably just fine. Is like we do want to get to that automation. If at some point we figure out that no, we don't want to group all enhancements under one category, but we want to begin to break those out, it's something that we could iterate on in the future. Like I don't think it's a bad step to sort of switch to what ReleaseDrafter is doing now. There's one, I think in general, like ReleaseDrafter, Kush, to what I understand, it's not working off, it's working off of PRs, correct? And the PR labels, it is not working off of issues.
Yes, it is working off PR and the labels.
Okay. Nupur, was that what you were, are we on the same page? Or?
Yeah, we are on the same page. I got your point.
So to try to wrap up this topic, I think the proposal is to use ReleaseDrafter. I haven't heard any naysayers thus far. What I have heard is some of our discussion about the configuration of ReleaseDrafter and just trying to figure out if these categories work well for us, and making sure that we've got a few additional labels signed. The challenge with, I think one of the bigger challenges with grouping by component is that Meshery itself, Meshery server, I think it's confused on some people that there's a component Meshery UI, Meshery server, Meshery docs, Meshery CTL. Sometimes people will put in a PR that actually affects both, right? Because if you're going to build something in the back end and you expose it in the front end, sometimes that goes into the same PR. So, where does that most appropriately land? It's just a judgment call, and in the end, it probably doesn't really matter. So all that to say, to me, if we went forth mostly with the config as is, that seems like a win. It's nice that it calls out the contributors. That's awesome.
Hi Lee, can you hear me?
Yep.
Lee, I think the release drafter that's currently working is, I think, is we want to be need some more advancement. But I think moving forward when we do automate things, and I think is when we move to that process, this might be some changes in that some environments. So I think in the first place, I think we should know that I think we should know that we can't couple together things, so they in moving forward can't be easily integrated to their own components as well. So I think it's I think currently it's doing a great job, good job. So moving forward when you automate that things, and also I think some repositories are, the good thing is that the feature that enhances with that is go to the docs as well. That this is a thing, and this is a more detail into the docs as well, and you can grab that what we are fixing, what is the moving that. I think moving forward we could automate that things. I'm currently working on that and planning out the. I think Kush, one things I think when we talk about some things here, I think it's easy for everyone else that some diagrams are there, so can easily grasp the concept what we're trying to say. So actually, I think Kush can. We have the release drafter thing and any commits stats. It's a good that we have some drawings available on the board as well. So can easily everybody can easily make out what we are trying to say. So I think the one good for my suggestion is that we can't uh, things in that couple together. Though things are moving good in the right now, but moving, so but the good thing is that we can't couple things together, so they can't be moved easily. So I think it's a lot more solution to that problem. And also in the one current position, there is a 10 or 100 of solution available. So right now I'm figuring out what is the possible solution is that. So I think good way is that's I'm trying to configure in the CI working group that everyone he can some doing some demo. Just prepare simple as small diagram as well, not a fancy, just the steps that we are trying to perform. That is, and everybody can really understand what we are trying to say.
Makes sense. Yeah, demos really help. Do we know for the other repositories, like if it, is ReleaseDrafter capable of looking across other repos in the same org and pulling in those changes into the same release notes?
No. It can't pull changes from another repository.
Got it. Okay. Kush, do you know if we come by and manually edit these ReleaseDrafter release notes? Like I'm assuming we can do that after the fact and maybe add in a couple of things that were fixed in a particular adapter or in a different repo. Certainly.
After just draft the notes. So ultimately, it's upon us that what additions and deletions we want to do before publishing an actual release.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Nice. Okay. Well, Simon, I think the comments you had were mostly positive toward moving forward here with the caveat of trying to improve in the future. Is that right?
So the next topic is although related to this one, like the main major problem which we're having with release drafter is about the labeling of PRs. So I was looking at GitHub Actions, and to manipulate GitHub Actions, you can either actually use PRs metadata, or you can actually use PR title. So if we want to trigger some specific PR actions for some specific PRs, like I think we don't need to trigger the release action of Meshery CTL for each and every PR, and also we do not want to trigger the Docker action for each and every PR. So like if any PR is having a label release, like if any PR is concerned with the release, so only for those PRs those actions will be run. So again there will be an issue of there will be an issue of labeling the PRs.
Hmm.
Like currently coming to the netlify is observing the directory. So if any directory is not concerned with the any PR which is not concerned with the change in the documentation directory, netlify automatically cancels the build, and this feature is not currently available with GitHub Actions. So we will have to go by labeling the PRs, reading the reading the labels of the PR, and then deciding which actions do we want to trigger.
Mm-hmm. Nice idea. So you're saying, hey, like PR labeling becomes important for ReleaseDrafter, and then it also becomes important for trying to streamline the CI workflows.
Yes, that's more like it.
Nice. And you were showing an example of a bot that will that that will automatically label pull requests based on you're saying based on semantic versioning, or just based on particular keywords about.
Yeah, I will just share my screen. It actually we have used in a past project. So like we are using ReleaseDrafter. We were using ReleaseDrafter in my past project. So we were using a bot. I think it was a custom bot written by us only. So as you can see this PR is having a prefix feed. So the auto label bot will read the PR title, and any PR with prefix feed will be labeled feature. Any PR with prefix fix will be labeled as fix, and it will be categorized in the bug fixes. And I think we have around 5 to 6 labels which are automatically categorized, like core. It can automatically detect the core and it will place it under the core label. The docs installation, it will place it in the documentation, and the dependencies. So like it was quite an easy bot. We actually took around 1 or 2 hours to write it.
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting thing because the way that works depends upon users doing, contributors doing the right thing of putting in that prefix into their title, which is actually not that much different than contributors just doing the right thing of assigning a label to their PR. Right?
We would need to update our contributor in docs to the PR labeling instructions.
Yeah. And that's fine. Okay. And I think it's actually nicer that they would just go right to that than we would be telling them to put in, some prefix, because ultimately the prefix is there to like get to the label. But that doesn't mean that having a bot running to assist with that is a bad thing. It's a good thing. Kush, do you know if after a PR is merged, if someone goes back and updates the labels in the merged PR because they were incorrect labels, I'm assuming ReleaseDrafter probably doesn't work retroactively.
Once the PR is merged, the release drafter's action is over. Once the PR is merged, release drafter triggers an action. So the action is already triggered after the merging. So if you will change the labels, the action won't be triggered again.
Got it. Okay. And that's fair. It seems like those that are doing a PR merge, that part of that process is that they would quickly confirm that the right labels are assigned. That makes sense.
Also, like having a prefix for a PR will keep the things more organized. Like if we give the contributor the right to label their own PRs, there can be a diversity. Like someone can label it enhancement, someone can label it feature. So we can't get a common label extracting all of these features or all of the PRs coming into a category. So
Was it
having a prefix or having some common rules may establish some more contributor guidelines.
sure? Sure, yeah. I don't think no one can. I don't think any contributors can create labels. They can assign existing labels. They can certainly type whatever they want to inside of the subject line for a PR or an issue, which is even more freeform. It seems like having both guidelines for encouraging contributors to use the appropriate prefix and then encouraging them to assign the appropriate label. Seems like those are both the right thing to do. I think we're all agreeing. I think as part of this, so PR labeling. I think the importance of that is highlighted. I don't know that we have all the right labels today in our repos. A couple of new ones have started to come about, but this could be a good area for a specific individual to go and do an assessment of what those labels are and maybe suggest, what the final set should be. Kind of look like, like this today. And I think sometimes area is used somewhat interchangeably with component. We don't have component labels, but I think that's mostly what's intended by them. So okay, let me ask some specific questions. One, would anyone like to volunteer to look at the current label set, and make an assessment as to whether or not we're complete, or if we need others?
Lee, can you hear me? Lee, one thing that I'm struggling to figure out that uh, our part of the Mystery project, we are working looking for another service meshes to easily incorporate that. So if they have one service mesh as a control as an ingress controller, I just say control as an ingress, and one doesn't have that control as an ingress controller, and when they try to adjust that to our, so one that the advancement that we are done that, so might be in the future we have recognized that we have a link to their repo, their docs as well. So we can hit that this merge release, click that to the docs that we have appreciation, and that doc as well in put up the another docs that this is a feature they have incorporated that data and that we've facilitate here in the Meshery. So then things not really they change, but the flow is kind of a very change in that manner if we adopted that. What's your thoughts on that?
Are you saying that like in context of our docs mostly, or like in context of trying to help like identify compatibility between adapters and different versions of specific service meshes?
Just figuring out that's in the previous version of that change, it doesn't support. Just I say the English controller for that service mesh, and that's the adapter for that. But the next version, we can integrate that's ingress controller. But that ingress controller might be the another vendor specific thing. So who might be we link that ingress controller goes to our page to go find that that's the thing that we incorporated, and that's the thing we enhances, and that's the feature that's we are changes there. So that's linked to other resources as well. So that release drafter might be have the just one document is there, but in other documents might be resourced to other places as well.
Yeah, for the most part, I think I get what you're saying. In general, I want to be positive on what, or I think I might not fully understand. Good. There are a bunch of interdependencies, not only within our project, or the Meshery project proper, but then to your point, like a bunch of dependencies and various degrees of compatibility with emerging features from those other projects, those other service meshes as they change. And then I think I got lost on like the specific suggestion that you had about how to better manage.
Just Lee, as a one working flow is that we have merged the our 1.3 release doesn't support the particular ingress controller for that. Just kind of assume that. And 1.4 is that incorporated that's ingress controller that. So in our docs as well, we have to link the other resources that we incorporated their changes in our project as well. So people may find to look at what the ingress controller means for that. That's not our thing, that's somebody else things. So if we incorporate that, then the docs that we are creating, they have to be updated as well. And the things that we are trying to change the release of, they have to some kind of a manipulating some changes, not a whole lot of, but some minute changes as well. That's my point here.
Okay. Yeah, let me see if I can give a specific example to bring that home. So one example is that we have an adapter for network service mesh for NSM. In our documentation, we talk about the fact that we support different sample apps and what those apps are, kind of how those apps are defined. Now, we don't define those sample apps. Those are defined by the NSM project. We have a little bit of duplicative, if you will, description of the sample apps, because it can just be helpful for those that are using Meshery to understand what those are. If you go to the network service mesh project, and you look at their docs, and you go to look at, I think like these same sample apps, they may, you can see some similarities between their documentation and ours, and that's intentional, right? We're leveraging things that they're creating. And so if they later on go to add, another component, another deployment to this sample app, that would affect our documentation, and it would ultimately affect the behavior of our sample app for that adapter. So I think that's what you're highlighting. The only way that I really know how to,
Yes.
yep. So one of the things, the only way that I really know to come around this is to ensure that the adapters that we have are for each service mesh is maintained by a representative of that service mesh, because they're the ones that are going to know what's changing inside their service mesh, how that affects Meshery and the Meshery adapter, and they're the ones that can help us keep that linkage, keep those dependencies up to date. There's a list of individuals who are maintaining adapters. We've got about half of the adapters covered by a maintainer of that other service mesh, and about half of the adapters not. So we've got a little bit of a gap, because I don't know that there's a way necessarily to automate this as much as to have someone who's maintaining an adapter who represents a different service mesh help Meshery keep pace. We're fortunate that on most of Friday's calls, we generally have like one or two of those, one or two representatives of other service meshes there. that's not enough. Yeah, I don't know if we can automate this somehow, I would love it. I don't know. I don't know how that can be done, but it would be great if it could.
Lee, I think would it be nice that we can't document their things, we just maintain the links to their docs. So if they changes their documentation, then we might have conflicts because we have an older documentation and they have a newer one. So I think it's a better approach to just link their docs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like it's one of those unnerving things when you think about having duplicative documentation. Not being the source of authority for it means that you will inevitably get out of date and out of sync. And so, good. I'm putting a note in here about adding links to each of the service meshes documentation. Simon, is that something that you can take on?
Yes, Lee, that's what I'm talking about. So the links to their documentation. So
Cool.
we have to maintain that as well. So I think people just click on our docs and they have go back to their links as well. I think other projects also doing the same that we're trying to solve here as well. I've seen particular example of that, and that's what I'm trying to ask here.
Cool.
I think that's a good approach. I think don't have to uh, manipulate some inevitably wrong documentation. That's the main point here.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so for example, on this adapter, we would describe the adapter, its state, some of the things that it does, but for some of this, but we would make sure to call out kind of prominently a link to that project's documentation. Is great. Is that so? Is that something you can volunteer to go do?
Yes, I'll check. So kind of just noticing the how to automate that things, because if we automate that thing, we have to make things standardized. So if you think manuals, so manual things is a kind of the some conflicts there. So I think we just trying to figure out how to standardize that things, because we have plenty of meshes docs that we have to take care for. So
Yep.
I think it's if we somehow manage the standard way of that, and then we move that to the automated way as well. Because
Yep.
I think if you want to automate something, you need to know how the manual step is that. So to just figure out how the manual step is that, and then we figure out how to automate that process. I think there's a plenty of option available on that. We can do automation that.
Nice. Yeah. In order to get there, there is a YAML file that tracks information about our adapters and has metadata about the adapters. That YAML file, inside that YAML file, we can just add a new attribute that has a link to the docs for each of those service meshes. And once that happens, we can have the link to those docs show up on this page. Other than that, there isn't any other way to automate it because all of those other projects are published under their own domain name, in their own fashion. Ultimately, at some point in each of those service meshes, we would want to have a description of the integration with Meshery and have them pointing back to Meshery as well. So as a first step, can you go about augmenting the existing YAML file that we have for the adapters, adding in the links to each of the documentation for these projects?
Yes, Lee, I definitely go through that. And one point that you raised very good is that they have changed the domain name of their link. So how to manage that as well. So I definitely look into that. and trying to figure out some great solution for that.
Okay, yeah, I think it's just going to be a manual link that you're going to find. You're not going to be able to automate that away. The automation will be in having that exposed on each of the documentation pages. But there's no, I mean, even with something like SMI as a standard approach to writing service mesh APIs, you're never going to get all projects to like standardize the way that they publish their docs. That's good. That'll help. Kush, as part of that, what'll end up helping later is as we engage deeper with each of those service mesh I'm sorry, did I say Kush? I mean Sime. What'll help further is that when those service meshes are pointing back, when they include some information about Meshery in their docs. Actually, NSM and that team is a good example of one that would be amenable to doing that. They have some information about Meshery on their page, but so I'll be seeking out those maintainers of the Meshery adapters to ensure that Meshery is represented in those service mesh docs. That'll be really helpful as well. Okay, so trying to wrap up for today. So we got one action item here for Simon. We're looking for a volunteer to assess the current labels that we have and suggest others. And then, so think about that. If no one volunteers, I'll go take care of it. The other item is about just sort of the approval of the use of ReleaseDrafter. And so I guess I'll ask that question first. Does anyone not want us to use ReleaseDrafter? Does anyone have issue that they think still needs to be addressed with ReleaseDrafter?
So if we're going to use the ReleaseDrafter, then the release notes are not going to be like they are right now, right?
Yeah, it will draft them in the way in which,
like on the PR's descriptions, or
yeah, that doesn't mean that we can't. Well, one, that we can't change the form, the way in which ReleaseDrafter is categorizing things. That can be done.
Edit after it is pushed, it is done. I saw that. What I wanted to say is that a change log and the release notes is not necessarily the same thing. Let's say in the change log, you can see if you want all the commits, all the PRs, and so on. And so, but in the same time, do we have a separate ticketing apps or just the GitHub issues? Because there are things that you add improvements, features, we extend the things.
Yeah, no, it's just GitHub.
In the release drafter, you can put the PRs. You can have the PR being linked with the GitHub issue. But yeah, so my thing is like this. I like the release notes how they are right now. But if I have a problem or something like a compatibility, I want to see the change log, which I want to see the issue that was fixed, and so on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be like we should have two things, either automated, either manual. I don't know, but.
Yeah. Let me
the change log and the release notes. I don't know if. I'm not against the release drafter. It's automation things and looks good, and it should be used. But I don't know for which one of those things that I'm saying, if it's the change log or the release notes.
Right. Yeah, it feels like ReleaseDrafter is highly capable of producing, detailed and specific, just a simple
logs,
yeah.
log history, or not log, journal log, history.
And then of the conversation that we were having about ReleaseDrafter, I think we were sort of trying to figure out, hey, can ReleaseDrafter produce that one step higher, that sort of more like release notes, not just these super nerdy specific like detailed logs, but could it also summarize a little bit of, can it do a better job of categorizing and summarizing? And it sounds like with bots and with PR labelings that might be possible, but that there's probably a little bit of human involvement here to briefly summarize those, and but that the real thing that probably, I shouldn't say real, but like rather the thing that most people will get the most value out of is probably like an actual write-up by someone saying that these are the new capabilities of Meshery CTL. And so to summarize that, it sounds like, hey, thumbs up from Adina, and it sounds like the rest on use of ReleaseDrafter and trying to automate change logs, you know, like a very specific listing of all of the PRs closed. To the extent that we can, it sounds like Adina, like to the extent that we can use ReleaseDrafter's organization and our PR labeling gets us to a point that it can produce something that's a bit more in the current format of the release notes that we have for Meshery, that would be ideal, but sort of the recognition that it will probably take a little bit of someone to craft those. Actually, I guess I'm just trying to categorize, like, does that, is the way in which I'm categorizing it line up?
It's good now. Now I agree with everything you're writing, but I was agreeing also before. I just had those two things.
Totally. Okay, cool. Well, I guess, so Kuch, if you're inclined to try to take us forth on ReleaseDrafter in at least the Meshery repo, producing those, you know, detailed logs to the extent, Kush, that we go ahead and get our labels and some of maybe our contributor, the contributor guide that we have to tell people to make sure that they're labeling PRs. Maybe ReleaseDrafter can fill in, you know, half or so, you know, get us further along in terms of release notes. Okay, we're a little bit over. I think you're all on the same page. Certainly, if we're not, let's catch up in the Slack channel. But this is good. I'm hoping we can move forward on this week at least. Simon had great comments on trying to ensure that we're representing very well our compatibility and with the service meshes. Hopefully, we'll get them pointing some links back to Meshery as well. We'll take if Nipur, if you don't jump in on the release labels, then I will. But either way, if you do it or I do it, I'll just post it into the Meshery CI channel, so for others to, you know, agree on or not. Any final thoughts from?
I actually forgot to mention my name there. I was typing, so.
I thought you were hovering over. Okay, good, cool, very good. Anything else today? Nice, okay. All right, very good. See you guys same time next week with some automated release notes, I guess, automated change logs. Cool, okay, all right, thanks all. See you guys later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye guys, bye.